Be strong.
All right, hour number 2 here on the throw-in, available on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Thank you guys for tuning in to us on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. If you guys missed any of our number 1 or any of our show, you guys want to go back and listen to it, be sure to download us on all audio platforms, wherever you guys can listen to your podcast. Be sure to download the throw-in with Justin. And boy, I tell you, Spreaker is one of my best friends here. They have really helped, and realistically, one of the best things that we have going on here today. Let's look at trying to The Throne's available on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, and Joe Salva. If I said that right, I probably butchered it. But be sure to check out. And if you guys are uploading podcasts, if you guys want to, I would encourage you guys to head on over to Spreaker.com. Provide you to get your money back, and for everything that you listen to, find out all your statistics, download, get everything you need on Spreaker. All right, we're just kicking off hour number 2 here with the continuance on baseball. It's been heavily on baseball. We'll get into some wrestling a little later on in our program at the bottom half of the hour. One thing I really want to kind of just emphasize here is that, obviously the Cincinnati Reds have not had a lot of success this year. A lot of people, I think, it's fair to say that they will point to management. I think that when you have problems in the front office, it is easy to make an excuse for how this team operates. Now, tomorrow, I know this for a fact, tomorrow morning, what we're going to do is that we're going to look into the comparison between the people that we acquired at the beginning of the season and compared to the people that we discarded, because I strongly feel that some of the decisions that we needed to make needed to be done for a reason. I don't think anyone could be upset the fact that the Reds had to discard and trade Eugenio Suarez, a guy who barely performed. It took him until September of last season to get his ducks lined up in a row. And by the time that he was able to get the bat on the ball and have good defensive position, which it took him the entire season. I know that a lot of Reds fans, including myself, was calling and asking to trade for Suarez during the trade deadline. We didn't get that. And you can't, based off the numbers, what you saw last year, it's a risk for any team to pick up a third baseman like Suarez. So what did the Reds force to do? They had to get rid of Jesse Winker. And listen, I know that the fans are upset. It's going to hurt Jesse Winker, Sonny Gray, Nick Castellanos, hell, even Tuka Barnhart, in my opinion, was a frustrating uh, release or trade during the offseason. And I feel like a lot of people under maybe this was the direction all along for the Reds organization. And you would have sold this regardless whether the league was on lockdown or not. But I think there's a lot of people that when when the lockdown is lifted and you only are given so many days or so many weeks to actually do something, you had to make a decision. Now it didn't help the front office any when they made comments to the fans, and I think that really hurts the fan base. And how can you be a baseball player for how can you play for an organization or have the encouragement when they really they really selected poor choice of words? And other than a 3-22 season to kick off the season, they're not really playing that terrible. Now, I mean, given they only got a handful of wins, they're only sitting with 34 wins here in the Central. I just had my notes up here a moment ago. Pull it back up. The Reds are only sitting 34-57 and 15 games back out of first place over the Milwaukee Brewers. Cincinnati Reds are also 14 games back after out of the wild card. But I think one thing that you're looking forward to this season is that there's a difference between, all right, what is the Reds trying to do? This is a team who made it to the playoffs back in 2022. Back in 2020. Now that's given. Hey, listen, you had a organization, you had a pandemic year. It was a shortened season. I think a lot of people were thrown off. A lot of teams were thrown off. But then you had last season where, the ins and outs, it took definitely some players a while to get into the 2021 season, but they were finding themselves in contingency up and through April, through September. And when you have a team who was fighting and you finally had something to get excited for in Cincinnati, and you see all the other success going around town, the Cyclones going to the playoffs, you had the Bengals going to the Super Bowl, you also had the Cincinnati Bearcats make it to the NCAA semifinals, the NCAA championship tournament. When you have exciting things going on, you have winning teams in Cincinnati, you kind of want everyone to be a part of that, to have a taste of that. And it's been so long since the Reds have been in the playoffs, and last year I think they've come so close, but with some small minor errors. And instead of finding ways to improving that, it seems like they're breaking down everything and they're unloading everything. When in order to do that, you have to be able to have some minor leagues in your system. One thing I think a lot of people don't give credit for the Cincinnati Reds, and I'm not making excuses. Right? These are professional ball club players. But one thing I think people aren't incorporating is that when the Reds start off this season, they didn't have their ace starter, Luis Castillo, in that rotation. They didn't have Mike Minor, who they picked up in that rotation. Matter of fact, they didn't get them back until about a month ago. So you really heavily relied on guys like Tyler Mahle, Vladimir Gutierrez to step in. Right? With the alongside, you have the rookie Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo, who just was drafted a few years back. I mean, it was just last season that Tyler Mahle was having his rookie year. So I think the workload on the starting rotation, you rolled that over into the bullpen. Now, I'm going to be straightforward. I really thought that Hunter Strickland was going to be a real knockout of the park. I think the workload on that was put, the pressure that was put on the bullpen to come in the fourth and fifth inning to really obtain a ball game, put a lot of stress on their bullpen. And hopefully, coming back after this All-Star break, we can finally see a Cincinnati Reds team that kind of made a wave towards the head of the break, a week ago. I mean, how many teams can come in and say that they could sweep the Tampa Bay Rays, that they can take 2 out of 3 against the best team in baseball, the New York Yankees? Not many teams. I tell you that. And I don't see the Boston Red Sox. I mean, yeah, they've had success against the Yankees, but I don't see the Oakland Athletics dominating the Yankees. And Luis Castillo was lights out against the Yankees last time. Now, hey, I feel a little bit relieved that the Reds didn't have to finish up that third game against the St. Louis Cardinals back on Sunday. Now, I kind of wanted them to. I was encouraged by the Reds to hopefully pick up a victory. You want to go into the All-Star break holding your head up high. I didn't want them to lose 3 games, and especially giving them to the Cardinals. Yeah, I really had high hopes going to St. Louis over the last weekend. But you know what? They're going to make up that game on September 17th, and I feel a little bit more comfortable about that game in September than I do, back on Sunday. But isn't that what the season's all about? So as we, now we focus in, all right, All-Star game is done with. Luis Castillo, which, by the way, who pitched an inning, a nice inning, really pleads his case. Talk about a player who most likely will be traded. And if you're the Cincinnati, if you're a fan of the Cincinnati Reds, you kind of just expect and know that there's really we know the right thing. The Cincinnati Reds should be offering Luis Castillo a handsome amount of money for a contract here to stay in Cincinnati. But we know that the valuable for Luis Castillo, it's not going to happen. And now you could wait until next year. I would say, hey, listen, wait until the offseason, because any team right now that is looking for a pitcher like Luis Castillo, but by the way, if any team who picks up, the only teams that are going to pick up Luis Castillo are teams who are contending in the postseason. And if you look into the New York Yankees, who are in conversation, you look into the Los Angeles Dodgers, these are, you add a ace pitcher like Luis Castillo onto that roster, they become instantly World Series contenders, if not projected to win the World Series. That's how much magnitude a guy like Luis Castillo has on a ball club. Hell, even the Astros have an opportunity to pick up Luis Castillo. I mean, and if there's no team that is contending right now that don't have their eyes set, that aren't in the conversation of, hey, how can we help ourselves? And if Luis Castillo is not on their list, then they're not qualified to be in the postseason. They're not going to make it pretty far. I mean, the San Diego Padres have their eyes on Luis Castillo as well. Now, I don't know what the San Diego Padres could have. Now, on a biased opinion, I will like the San Diego Padres. I think this will be a very nice addition, considering that Mike Clevenger and Blake Snell hasn't been on their A game. They really need some little extra pitching, okay? And Luis Castillo could give you 6-7 innings solid, especially when you go up against teams like the Yankees and could pitch like an ace, like you belong there. In the game that he pitched back on last Thursday. Last Wednesday. No, it was last Thursday. That was a playoff game. So where does the Reds sit? Unfortunately, I think that I think in the right mind, unloading Luis Castillo. You also think about, doesn't he not deserve to be on a winning team? does he not deserve to go out there and make some money on his own? I mean, this is a kid who's been leading this franchise for a couple years, holding the fort down. You've seen guys like Sonny Gray and Mike Miner come and go, and it's frustrating. But he deserves to make money. He deserves to go on a winning team. And the way that we look at things and take a look at the draft picks here, I mean, this team isn't really, it's kind of putting the brakes on and trying to reset. They sat there and they said, all right, we had a 2-year span. We failed those 2 years, so let's unload and let's rebuild. I don't know if the fans in Cincinnati have the patience to wait for a 2026 season. Do you have the patience? Especially with how good the Bengals are, and they're looking to make a repeat. It's very difficult, and it's a tough pill to swallow when you had a team that came so close last season. They went to the playoffs and played October baseball in 2020. By the way, they got shut out in the playoffs. And now to see them practically unload players that they finally got behind. But you know what? I think that's something that you're empowerable. Okay. One thing that, I was listening to how the results of the draft went, and we have to take a break, but I want to wrap this up with this statement. I was listening to the drafts. Now, I'm not going to get into how the draft wins. Now, the Reds picked up some pitchers, some catchers, some pitchers, some position players. They picked up Jackson Holiday with the number 1 pick. They didn't pick up with Jackson Holiday. Baltimore Orioles picked up shortstop Jackson Holiday, but I mean, the Reds picked up a handsome amount of guys. Sal Stewart, Logan Tanner, Justin Boyd. I'm not saying that they're not going to be bad people. Let me throw this out there for you guys. And I don't think, the Reds haven't done terrible, but the difference between NBA drafts and NFL drafts compared to MLB drafts. So when it comes down to NFL drafts and NBA drafts, they're expected to play within that year or the next year. They're expected to be stars. And if you don't make it in the 2 to maybe 3 years at most, then you're not making it in the business. But most of these guys are coming out of high school, coming out of college. They're going to go right down to the minors, to the development system, and they're going to learn how to play Cincinnati Reds baseball. It's going to take about 3 to 5 years. The guys got to come out of college. It's going to come in sooner. Guys that are going to come out of high school, it's going to take about 5-7 years. These are guys that you don't know in 5 or 7 years if these guys are even going to have what it takes. So out of the 10, 15 rounds that you have over the 3 days and over the guys you picked, maybe 1 out of those 10 guys work. And out of that 1 person, 1, maybe 2, who knows at that time if they're going to be even on the Cincinnati Reds. And we're in a league today. You can't plan for 2022. You can't plan for 2026. You can't say, hey, we're going to have a team built and ready for you by 2026. It doesn't work that way in baseball. Baseball's working where you need, if you don't have the top star talent, or if you're not in it that year, then you might as well unload. It's the same thing that goes with baseball. You're given 1, 2, maybe 3 years at most, but then things start falling off because you just can't keep guys. They want more money. You look at Juan Soto, which we'll talk about here after we come from the break. But this is a guy, this is a team that now they're wanting to unload. Now they want to build for another 5 years. And I don't even know if they have the minor league talent to do so. Whoever gets Luis Castillo needs to hurt and needs to pay. At the end of the day, Luis Castillo, I want to say, is as good as Juan Soto in the trade. But you really need to get something out of Luis Castillo if you're going to look to move him. If not, I say wait until the off season and see if anyone's looking for long term, because you're going to need to get prospects and minor leaguers. You're going to need to get a couple of combinations of guys who are ready to go now and guys who are ready to go in the next 2 to 3 years. And when we come back, I'm going to finish up our baseball conversation, talk about Juan Soto turning down $440 million. Just think of, you have that insurance money and you turn that down. The throw-in continues here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Sunday afternoon baseball continues here on the TNC Sports Talk. Join us in as the All-Star Game is complete. We are back at baseball this Sunday with the San Francisco Giants and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Catch out how the Giants and the Dodgers perform this Sunday at 4:10 Eastern Standard Time on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. I'm going to give a shout out and congratulations to Cincinnati Reds pick infielder Cam Collier, the first round pick of the MLB draft for the Cincinnati Reds, as the Reds went in over the weekend in the draft pick. A lot of people said that this was a good pick, and the Reds should look high up to. They really should have their heads up when it comes down to some of these picks in the future. And I'm just my thing is with the Reds is that the future can't be 2026. We don't have the time. The fans don't have the time to wait for the 2026. And this is where you feel gutted, you feel betrayed after everything that has required this season. And we'll talk more about it before the Reds continue and resume play on the Sunday or on Friday. But you really want to end off the season on a good note. And to think that a guy like Luis Castillo is going to be potentially traded. Now, overall, I told you this. I believe that Luis Castillo should be given an offer from the Reds. But at the same time, when you are a pitcher as magnitude, listen, if you or any other franchise who are contending, such as baseball, or such as the Padres, the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Astros, the Giants, the Phillies, the Red Sox, the Mariners, who's on a tear as of late, shouldn't you or wouldn't you want to be a part of getting an additional pitcher like Luis Castillo, getting a playoff favorite? Just imagine if you're able to pick up a guy like Juan Soto this year, who made his claim on Monday after winning the home run derby. Making his claim, and I think a lot of people, because I was listening to a lot of people talk on Monday, because the big breaking news coming out of the weekend is the fact that Juan Soto turned down a 15-year, $440 million contract. And I'm flabbergasted. I'm distraught to even think about the security money that anyone will get. If you got a piece of paper in front of you saying all you got to do is come on here and talk. If I had a contract for $450 million in my hand, I don't care if someone's making 10 times as much of me. $450 million, that is maybe, I want to make maybe 2% of that a year. But to see Juan Soto turn that down, he's gambling on himself. Now, listen, he's simply gambling, saying, hey, I'm I'm better than the best players right now that are getting paid more. There's a lot of guys out there that are going to get paid more than him for 15 years. Now, it could work both ways. Now, I believe Juan Soto's agent is Scott Boras, which we know by now, who is notorious for getting guys money. And I think that there's a little bit of a gamble going on. But if anyone could get a Juan Soto, you're having to get, I don't even know if there's a trade that's available for one guy. The Nationals are obviously trying to unload their roster. You think of, okay, well, is it even physically impossible to give? I mean, you're going to have to practically give up your entire Double A and Single A team for a guy like Juan Soto, because more than likely a Juan Soto trade is going to have to be dealt with Steven Strasburg, for an example, who just, if the Nationals are trying to unload, this is where that figure goes. I'm just imagine getting off for that much money. But you know what? I think he's worth it. And I think the home run derby, winning case is worth it. And I think, Juan Soto should be making the right decision. He should not be flying commercial class to go to the All-Star game. And not in my opinion. I mean, it's one thing to see the Oakland Athletics have their only All-Star representation go as a commercial class, and then to see him to fly with an opponent. That's something interesting, but that's something acceptable. But to see Juan Soto, a guy who probably has the biggest bargaining chip on the market today, probably of the year, who probably will have the next biggest record and contract in Major League Baseball, at the young age he is. Are you at all anywhere near? What do you guys think? Should he have signed his contract at $440 million? Or where? And I mean, and here's the thing. And I guess I'm saying at a biased opinion because I'm a San Diego Padres fan. As long as Juan Soto, I don't think really realistically, I don't think there's anybody that can possibly have Juan Soto, because right, at least right now, without having to give up a lot of money. So that narrows it down to teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers and possibly maybe the Astros, and that have the extra money that can unload it. I mean, look what happened for the Dodgers. Look what they did. They got Mookie Betts. But what did they have to do in order to get Mookie Betts? They had to get David Price, who is now sitting on the sidelines for majority of the time. And the Dodgers had the money to pay David Price that enormous amount of money each and every year, and they eat up his contract. The Red Sox unloaded Mookie Betts in exchange, saying, hey, listen, all right, I'll give you Mookie Betts at a cheap price. We'll sign you big, but then you have to eat up one of our big contracts as well, and you're going to get a David Price. If I'm the Washington Nationals, you can't tie any trades into Juan Soto unless you have a guy like Steven Strasburg in. It's just one of your top guys who is, that is really eating up your payroll salary each and every year, that is definitely not performing. So now you look into a team, all right, well, you could get away with getting Juan Soto out of, and whoever's picking Juan Soto up, you're going to have to be able to eat a contract, like I said, as the strength to a Steven Strasburg. And unfortunately, I think that for a lot of teams right now in their position, they don't want to be open up, but to having to pay that much money. I don't think even the Padres have that much money. But even if you could come to a conclusion right there, you can't just give up one or two players. I was listening to the Padres and what they would offer to give up, and would it be necessary if the Padres offered up the top five prospects on their organization for a Juan Soto? Could they eat up a Steven Strasburg? Would Steven Strasburg even help in their rotation? We know if you're San Diego, besides the bullpen, which is flaky, the outfield really needs help this second half of the season. Jurickson Profar, I think, has proven to a lot of people more so than none that he's more of an everyday outfielder, and he's hold his ground very well. But Trent Grissom hasn't been hitting his weight. Will Myers, when he was playing, hasn't been playing well, and so they're really desperate for an outfielder as well for an at bat. A Juan Soto really does that. But I mean, are you willing to trade? Even a guy like Fernando Tatis, who's locked up under, his no trade clause. And are you really willing to give up your minor leagues like a CJ Abrams and a Robert Hassel the third in order to have a Juan Soto? That, by the way, he will be a bargaining chip either in a year or two down the road for more prospects, or you want to sign him long term. So I think there's a lot of factorials. I personally don't think at the end of the day, Juan Soto will be traded. I think there's just too much pressure to be on the clock for him to be traded before the deadline. I would be very surprised if he does get traded. To see who he goes to. I'm really looking forward to the Yankees and for the Los Angeles Dodgers, if at all. And like I said, a biased opinion, as long as he doesn't go to LA, then I'm perfectly fine. All right. So that's going to wrap up our baseball today. I know we spent an hour and 40 minutes on baseball, and there was a lot to cover, and we're going to cover a lot more. Tomorrow we'll take a look at the American League side standings. I want to take a look at more of other Cincinnati trades that could possibly be stirring the pot. Because there's a couple of people I like if you're going to have to move some guys. And there's a couple of people I don't like that I think are considered to be moved, making way to this new image of how the Reds play. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. We're going to get ready for baseball, which brings back tomorrow. Like I said, there's about 8 teams playing. There's a couple of double headers. I don't like that. All right. I think that players need to have a day off. They need to have 2 days off. They need to resume back on Friday. But there are baseball tomorrow, so I'm excited to talk about that. Dodgers and Giants are one of them. The Yankees are playing. Detroit's playing. So we'll go over all of that tomorrow. Okay. I want to go ahead and talk about coming up next. I want to talk about Ric Flair's last match. It was just announced yesterday and confirmed that coming up on Sunday, July 31st, Ric Flair is going to have a tag team match. He'll be teaming up with his son-in-law Andrade to be facing Jay Lethal and now Jeff Jarrett, who, by the way, has a busy weekend ahead of him coming towards SummerSlam. And we'll get all that to you coming up here next, as well as getting you guys ready for AEW Dynamite. Hey, you guys, if you guys are into wrestling, you guys love listening to wrestling, or just want to talk, just listen to strict wrestling podcasts, be sure to check out Armchair Booking podcast with Steve Barber, Dwayne Davis, 2 wrestling fanatics, long life wrestling fanatics, and where they come on several times a week on their podcast, Armchair Booking Wrestling, and they talk about news, highlights, stories in the professional wrestling world. Okay, last episode was just a couple of days ago, and the title of it was 1995 a bad year for professional wrestling as people think? And I'll tell you this: I listened to I listen to plenty of podcasts throughout the day when I head into work in the afternoon, between the sports centers that I tune in first thing in the morning, or even listening to the San Diego radio station or Busted Open podcast. Armchair Booking is a must listen to priority. You think of just the team of Steve Barber, Dwayne Davis, they've known each other since they were kids. They really feed off of one another. And if you really want an authentic wrestling fan experience and a thought process, I would go check out Armchair Booking Podcast today. They're available on YouTube. They upload every episode on YouTube, and they also on anywhere you can get your audio platforms. And you just go in there, listen to a couple of them, and you're really just getting a different side of the story, which I really enjoy the most. And if when it comes down to wrestling, yeah, you watch the product, and yeah, you get your own thoughts on what you think and how things, create your own opinions. But it's always good to listen to multiple people. And when it comes down to Armchair Booking, both Steve Barber, Dwayne Davis, they present really great, ideas. They have really great thoughts, and they really give you a new image on how to look at professional wrestling. So go check out Armchair Booking Podcasts. They're available on YouTube, and they're available anywhere you listen to your podcast at. All right, we're going to take a break here. When we come back, talk a little bit about Ric Flair's final match coming up, and we'll talk about the upcoming AEW Dynamite here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel.
Yeah. Wait. They claim they want beef like I ain't in a teed up. I turned them to vegan. I'm really a creature. She sent me the beacon. I beat it and flee it. They tell like these niggas won't beat me. They can't. I'm somewhere tucked off. I'm laid in the shade and I'm counting mine. Still ain't made it. I'm jaded. My latest, my greatest. I ain't ever caving. They see me. I'm him. I'm a gym in the soil.
Discover world-class artists, composers, and bands. Find the perfect soundtrack and give your social media accounts the music they deserve. Epidemic Sound is a royalty-free music league. Check out epidemicsound.com for more information. All right. Hey, listen, a little bit exciting time here. We're going to be counting this down as days come by here. And right now, okay, as we sit here today, we're currently sitting at, all right, July 31st, 6:05 p.m. 11 days, 8 hours, 16 minutes, and 45 seconds counting for Starrcast V. And it's an already sold out arena. I think it's going to sit about 9,000. And, I was listening to Conrad Thompson on the Busted Open podcast with Dave LaGreca and Bully Ray back yesterday. And he was going over the match card for for Starrcast. And this is actually really a really big match card that is presented. And obviously the main event of the night is going to be Ric Flair's final match. And it was interesting hearing the stories that was being told about Ric Flair's final match and how Conrad was explaining about how Hulk Hogan had a indie match as his final match, and just thinking about, hey, as a legend, as an iconic legend, that you get a chance to wind down your career, you really want to know and go out on your own terms. And Ric Flair was interviewed yesterday. It's just there's been a lot of controversy about whether or not Ric Flair should have one last match or not. And I know earlier during the year I wasn't the biggest most exciting fan about Ric Flair having it. At the end of the day, one thing that you really do, you want one as a professional wrestler, you want closer. Now I'm not nowhere near a professional wrestler. I'm not anywhere in physical shape. I never. I haven't been in the ring. I was, I probably spent like 2 days in the ring at most in my life, and that didn't work out for me. When you have wrestled and made an impact on the wrestling industry, I think you have to respect if you can be cleared to have one last match. Okay, Ric Flair wasn't happy with his last match, when he faced Sting. So to be able to come back and have one last match, leave under his own terms, you think of how the match is presented, facing Jay Lethal, probably a feud that I think a lot of people wanted to have. And it's interesting. So Ric Flair is going to have a tag match, and it was, confirmed, just talked about, promoted yesterday on the Busted Open podcast, and we will heavily promote it over the next week and a half, as now we're at 11 days, 8 hours, 13 minutes, 44 seconds and counting to the last match of Ric Flair. It will be Ric Flair and his son-in-law, Andrade, taking on Jeff Jarrett, who, by the way, is also, I believe, is a special referee for the SmackDown, for the Unified Tag Team Championship match at SummerSlam. And he'll be taking on he'll be teaming up with Jay Lethal. And this is Starrcast V, which is on July 31st. It was interesting about everything that's going on, because tickets are sold out. All right. This is going to be down in I want to say Nashville, Tennessee. I believe tickets are already sold out, about 9,000. Really good prices. Ric Flair, they're going to have a roast on July 29th. The roast of Ric Flair, and I was listening to the podcast, the Busted Open podcast yesterday, and they're going to have Bully Ray as part of the roast for Ric Flair that Friday. And then what's interesting is I believe it's $50, and you could go on, I'm on Starrcast.com, and you could get a chance to win the robe, which I think is really cool. So the robe raffle, you'll have a chance to win. They're going to raffle the Ric Flair's retirement robe, the last robe that he's going to make. Each entry will have a unique ID, and one lucky entry will win Ric Flair's retirement robe. Entry to be selected on the 31st and will be contacted on August 1st. Proceeds of the raffle benefits First Step Foundation. And you think of a guy as Ric Flair, okay? You think of a guy as magnitude as a Ric Flair. And this, according to what the details were, this robe is kind of imitating the first ever robe that he wore down to the ring, and just being able to have a history of the robe of Ric Flair's last match. I mean, if I get a chance, I'm throwing my $50 towards this raffle ticket. And I'm sure there's 100 people looking into getting this. And here's the interesting part. All the proceeds going to the First Step Foundation. You think about back in 2017, where Ric Flair was on his deathbed at this moment. All right. He is, I think a lot of people growing up, one of the most inspirational persons of the world. And when you think of wrestling, yeah, there's the Hulk Hogan's, but I think a true wrestling fan, knows a lot more about Ric Flair than anything else. So I think I think we have to start just coming to the sense. All right. Ric Flair is going to have a match July 31st. Whether you like it or not, he was clear to wrestle. He's been training really hard. I believe that a tag team match allows a lot of action to be taking place and allows to protect Ric Flair on a more personal and pristine level. And when I say by that, I really do mean that. You have Ric Flair going to be able to take a bump, be able to get his work in, and do the old nature boy stuff. And, I could sit here and talk blue in my face. Oh, he shouldn't be doing this. He shouldn't be doing that. And at the end of the day, it's Ric Flair. It's the nature boy. All right. So one thing you got to realize, all right, you start looking at some of this match card too. And I want to look at this match card, is that sometimes when you grew up on wrestling, you didn't have an alternative job. Wrestling, you devoted 365 days a year, if not 400 days a year. And so when you come up to the age where you retire, it's kind of hard to stay out of the business. I mean, Vader was still competing up until he passed away. I mean, you look at some of the match card at Starrcast, which is I think it's been developed, and so it's a really good match card here. Okay, you have Arn Anderson representing the Four Horsemen, Brian Pillman Jr. and Brock Anderson taking on and representing the Rock and Roll Express, Kerry and Ricky Morton with Robert Gibson at ringside. That's going to be an exciting match. You got the Wolves, Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards taking on Motor Machine Guns, right? Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin. One of an arguable greatest feuds in the indie circuit that is going to be a dream match rematch. I think this is going to be a really great match. One of the best wrestlers of all, I think a lot of people say, in this generation, Rey Fenix will take on Taurus, Laredo Kid, and Bandino. You also have the Impact World Title match. Now, Jacob Fatu, not a part of Impact Wrestling. Josh Alexander, the Impact World Champion, is putting his title on the line to defend it against a non-Impact wrestler. Then you got Jordan Gracie, the Impact's Knockout Champion, taking on Deanna Prazo and Rachel Ellering. You got Killer Cross taking on Harry Smith. You got Clark Connors taking on Ren Narita. Marshall and Ross, the Von Erichs, will take on the Briscoes. And I also believe that there is a battle royale going on. That's going to be going on. I forgot the name and the details of it. I'll have to get back with you on a later episode. But there is a lot of stuff. There is a lot of stuff that's going on this weekend. I found out a lot about it yesterday, and I like, if you guys get a chance, you should watch it. Obviously, it's going to be on pay-per-view. You guys could buy it on if you guys are an old school person. But, I mean, if you get a chance, you guys could find it on the Fight. It's available on Fight TV, Apple, Android, Roku, Amazon Fire TV. And I don't know how much it's going to be. I'm going to have to look into that. But like I said, I'm looking into getting this. And to be able to just the chance to see Ric Flair's last match. I don't know about you, but I think it's something special to be said and done. All right. As we wrap up our show this morning, and we thank you guys for tuning back in. I know it's been a while, and I appreciate we're just going to get started. We'll be back again tomorrow, 8 to 10, new time frames. I know there was a lot of teasing going on about we're going to start out from 7 to 9 on Monday and then move from 8 to 10. And it's just now we have things settled. I'm excited about it because now we get to come back. We get to talk about AEW Dynamite tomorrow. Talk a little bit about Raw, but I wanted to avoid about WWE today. Talk a lot about baseball. Well, a lot of excited going on our show. We got Dynamite tonight, and boy, I'll tell you, Dynamite tonight supposed to be a big one. If you're looking at the previews and the match cards. Tonight's big match is Jericho versus Eddie Kingston in a barbed wire everything death match for tonight. And I'm like, dude, it can't get any better than this. Sometimes, from WWE changing to that PG-14 era, and you'll get a chance to see that you'll get a chance to sort of see how WWE changes, and I think that's better for the company. And, we'll get a chance to see tonight, though, just on the next level. And this is the new excitement I think people really like and really go around. And I don't know. I'm curious to find out. I'm wondering, in your opinion, before I leave you off the show today, is this barbed wire death match one, appropriate for television, and is this too much for kids? I understand the whole concept of, hey, let's do something bigger and better and more destructive for fans. But is this too much for kids? Talking about barbed wire death match. Just a few weeks ago, we saw what's it called? War Games, which I thought that was exciting. I think it's one thing to see a wrestler thrown off the cage, but isn't another to see a ring wrapped around barbed wire? I don't know. I'm gonna let you ponder over that, but that is expected for tonight on AEW Dynamite. And boy, we have a lot more to talk about. Like I said, we'll get it back. We'll get a chance to get back with you tomorrow. You guys could tune in from 8 to 10 in the morning, and we'll find out what happens afterwards. So on behalf of me and the crew, I want to give a shout out to Streaming Our Studios, who provides the studio to create this episode. Speaker, which you could download, which we upload all of our episodes on, and you can download us on all audio streaming platforms. Like the things, Facebook, Twitter, which you guys are also watching us on, as well as Epic Demo Sound. Discover your world-class artists, composers, or bands, find the perfect soundtrack, and give your social media accounts the music they deserve. EpicDemixSound.com is a royalty-free music link. All right. Beyond that, for everyone, I want to just say thank you. And until tomorrow, you guys have yourself a good day.